one thing I said last Saturday was, I said, I'm looking forward to hosting the college football playoff, recap show. We're going to be the first voices that people hear when that second game goes final. I'm thrilled, and I'm just, honored that the bosses want both of us in at that time slot. But I bring it up because I also mentioned, I said, I'm also excited to work on Friday because we have a Cotton Bowl game between Missouri and Ohio State. And I said, look, Ohio State obviously coming off a third straight loss to Michigan. But what I found interesting was immediately after the game, it felt like there was some frustration with Ryan Day, and then it immediately became a de facto criticize the quarterback who, for people who don't follow Ohio State on a day-to-day basis, was a kid named Kyle McCord. He ends up leaving this offseason essentially because of the fact that I think essentially like Ryan Day basically told me, you're not good enough, we're going to recruit over you, whatever. I bring it up, Jason, because obviously if Ohio State had won it, this would not be a story. But right now as we speak, on social media, the phrase Fire Day is trending on Twitter. I don't think December 29th is Fire Day somewhere that I'm just not aware of. But I know it's a little dramatic. Ryan Day is not getting fired. But we get told that all of these bowl games are meaningless, but to have a quote-unquote offensive genius head coach, and I understand the starting quarterback who was the backup for most of the season, Devin Brown, did get hurt early in the game. Ohio State finishes with 203 yards of total offense, 3 total points, 0 points over the final 3 quarters. And I'll tell you what, Jason, people are frustrated as you know what with Ryan Day right now.
Like I said, the way that I talked about how you set up a paper trail, if there's somebody you want to let go and you know it's going to be difficult or there's going to be a union involved or something like that, you look at everything. You try to find every little thing that you can put in that file that you can use as evidence to get the result that you're looking for. In this case, I think a lot of the frustration now existed long before they kicked that ball off tonight. And now you've got something else you put in that file, especially if that's the result you're wanting. The problem for Ryan Day is he doesn't really have anything to throw back at that critique, because here we go again. It's not just Ohio State now where you are coaching as if you're the mascot for the Cotton Bowl, meaning you are coaching soft. You are coaching like a cotton ball. This is one you should have won, Ryan, because it feels like it's right in your wheelhouse. When you play against a team in a big game like Michigan for the last 2 years, the aggression's out the window. The creativity's out the window. Everything's super vanilla, super careful, to a fault. And you kind of handcuff your own team because you're afraid. That's how it looks from the outside watching the performance, especially considering the aggressive nature of how you play against Rutgers or somebody like that. So now it's Missouri. That's not Alabama. That's not Michigan. That's not one of those kind of programs. It's Missouri. They're good. They're a top 10 team, but it's Missouri. Your quarterback goes down early. He's 4 of 6 for 20 yards. The guy that's going to, take over from McCord now that he's hit the transfer portal and gone elsewhere. He gets injured early, and you're terrified. And I saw it, and you read it early. Ari Wasserman's tweet about being afraid for your third-string quarterback to throw. It's the Cotton Bowl. What do you have to lose? I mean, yeah, you might lose the game, but who cares? You lost the game anyway, and you still were coaching scared. You still were coaching conservatively. So, yeah, the reason why you're seeing fire Ryan Day isn't because they lost to Missouri. It's because this is becoming a script in too many games that actually matter to the fan base. They didn't want to lose to Missouri. They really didn't, I don't think. And they look at this, and again, they're already not happy with you. You lose this game, right into that file, right onto that paper trail, makes it easier for them to call for your head.
Couple notes here. 1, 3 points scored was the fewest of the Ryan Day era. I assume that's as a head coach because he was an offensive coordinator there for a little while. Also, this is the stat that I think is kind of the money stat, if you will, as far as Ryan Day is concerned. He is now, I just want to make sure I find this, I get all my numbers correct here. This is via CFB Report, if I can ever find it, and I'm having trouble finding it all of a sudden. This is bad radio, whatever. He is 0-3 versus the SEC, which I think is worth noting. Let me see if I can find it. I don't know how I just lost this tweet. This is awful, awful, awful radio. But he is now, in his career as the Ohio State head coach, Ryan Day is now 0-3 versus the SEC, as I said. He is now 1-6 versus top 10 teams, if that... Okay, here it is. 56-8 overall. So everyone who wants to say, he wins a bunch of games. Okay, that's cool. But as Jason said, he doesn't win the games that his fan base cares about. 1-3 versus Michigan, 0-3 versus the SEC, 1-6 versus top 5 teams. That doesn't necessarily apply to tonight, but it doesn't change the fact, Jason, that, and keep in mind too, here's the other thing. This is Ohio State. This isn't even Penn State, even Oregon. I mean, there are, even within the crux of good teams in college football, there is another tier that the expectation level is just different. And I think Ohio State is in that conversation. There is nothing that they don't have where they shouldn't be competing at the highest level of the sport. And I know you can argue that they are. But when you are the Ohio State head coach and you're 0-3 in the last 3 seasons against Michigan, 0 Big Ten title game appearances, 0 Big Ten championships, 0 wins in the college football playoff. They did make it last year in just 1 appearance. Like, this is Ohio State. This isn't like I don't know where to draw the line between third string quarterback and Cotton Bowl as opposed to this is Ohio State. And like you should have. I don't want to say you can't ever lose a game to a team like Missouri because Missouri's 11-2. But the manner in which you did it, off the last time that we saw you, the starting quarterback basically gets forced into the portal. I don't know how you can't, as you said, Jason, look at a resume that continues to build upon itself and just say this guy, at the very least, is not coaching to the caliber of what should be expected of an Ohio State football coach.
So I'm going to say something I'm not sure I have ever said about Ryan Day, and it's because during your last response right there, it finally hit me. One guy, there have been a couple coaches that I have been pretty consistently negative on throughout the course of our show over the years. One of them is Jimbo Fisher. The other one is James Franklin. And the big reason that I've gone after James Franklin is because he talks a good game, but they never beat anybody that matters.
Sure.
They never do. They lose in these key games. They lose to Ohio State, or they lose to Michigan, or they lose games that they have no business losing. And so I don't care what they do against also Rans. I don't care what they do in a lot of these things. I want to see them do something. I want to see the offense do what it's supposed to do. I feel like he's overrated as a game day coach. I understand he recruits well. I understand a lot of these things, but it just seems to me that he's overrated, and I didn't understand the contract extension and the fact that, everybody's going to be crawling over broken glass for James Franklin. I don't think so. Like, I think he's pretty good, but I that's about it. I think that resume is pretty complete at this point, and there is a flaw there that I'm not sure you can fix. If I'm going to be consistent with that argumentation that I lay out about James Franklin, then Ryan Day is overrated too. Then Ryan Day is not a particularly good game coach either. He's not that good on Saturday, because every critique that I have laid out about James Franklin over the last half decade or more, Ryan Day is guilty of right now. And I can throw in that he gets conservative. I don't think James Franklin gets conservative. I'm not sure he does have the horses, and I'm not so sure we've ever called him an offensive genius either. But if I'm going to level that critique towards James Franklin, then I've got to be consistent and level it towards Ryan Day. Because in big games, of which I'm not even sure Penn State qualifies at this stage because of the James Franklin factor, I am, at this point, I feel like anytime Ohio State and Michigan play, I'd better take Michigan. Because I can feel like at least they're going to give me full-on effort, and they're going to go for broke in that game. And then in a bowl, the most impressive game of Ryan Day's entire coaching career was a loss to Georgia last year.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
What does that say? If I'm going to level that critique against Franklin, I've got to level it against Day. So I've never said it before, I don't think. But Ryan Day, as a game day coach, yes, he is flat out overrated.
And, the other thing, too, is, he coaches scared, which we saw tonight. And, okay, if you want to make the argument third-string quarterback, whatever, I don't think you should make it because it is the freaking Cotton Bowl. But the counter to that would be like, you have the third-string quarterback, okay, whatever. But here's the thing. He coaches scared in every big game. Like you can even, the Penn State game they won, and both coaches were coaching scared. Then you have the Michigan game where, to your point that you brought up earlier in the show, this is Aaron Torres, Jason Martin filling in for Jason and Mike, and we've talked about this a little bit throughout the show. But, they were facing an interim head coach. Like maybe we haven't even brought up that part enough. He not only, Sharon Moore now has more wins in the Michigan-Ohio State rivalry over the last 3 seasons than Ryan Day does. And he was coaching scared. He was punting from inside his own territory. Sharon Moore was the guy who was calling,
aggressive, creative,
exactly.
Go for broke. He was everything that we were told Ryan Day was supposed to be.
Yes, and so, and it's so tough to have these conversations because obviously the logical question is like, if you don't want Ryan Day, who do you want? And it's like, well, there's 2 thoughts to that. One, neither Jason or I is actually saying he should be fired, despite the fact that it is trending on social media. But 2, and this is the more important part, I will also counter with saying this, Jason. If you're not beating Michigan, and by the way, it goes to a 12-team playoff next year, so maybe things change. By the way, maybe Jim Harbaugh goes to the NFL, maybe that element of it changed. But here's my argument. Everyone will say, well, who are you going to get that's better? I mean, you mean to tell me there's nobody available that can beat Michigan, win the Big Ten, and go to a 4-team college football playoff? So, I don't know. I don't know what else to say. Really quick, because, again, you and I do the Saturday show, and I will say, like, we had the conversation about Lincoln Riley when things started to go bad of, two phases is, should he try to go to the NFL, and would anybody want him at this point? Do you think with all these coaching jobs that are going to open up, like, one, do you think Ryan Day, because what I keep going back to, Jason, is not that he's going to be fired. It's not that he even should be fired. But what I will say, the next 9 months of that guy's life are going to suck. Like, I'm sorry. Now, maybe there's something that happens. Maybe there's a player they get out of the portal. I don't know. But you just put up 3 points in a postseason game against, as you said, freaking Missouri, with due respect to Missouri. But you put up 3 points against Missouri, and I just think it's going to be a miserable 9 months for him. So, do you think he should at least look to the NFL? Do you think he is of interest to the NFL, given that, as we've said, he's supposed to be an offensive genius? His team can't move the football. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's not like I all of a sudden don't think he's worthy of anything. I
agree.
I think that we are getting to the point where who are you going to get that's better argument doesn't hold that much water, because I think there are a lot of guys that can take an Ohio State program that is pretty much always good and go beat Maryland and beat Rutgers and beat Michigan State and beat these schools. The one thing that I think we have to keep in mind, and I think Ryan Day in the back of his head knows this too, 12-team playoff might be the greatest thing in the world for him, because now the Michigan game isn't going to be everything, except maybe to that fan base, but it's not going to be in terms of getting a shot to play in a college football playoff. So you're not going to have to make your case about you're still one of the 4 best teams in the country even after you lose to Michigan year after year after year, if indeed that continues. But eventually, it's not going to be good enough. Right now, if you wanted to argue that it is not good enough, it would be hard to then fight against that without just calling in again all the games that he has won that Ohio State fans, you mentioned earlier that Ryan Day suggests and has said out loud, I coach at Ohio State, I'm expected to win every game. I actually listen to that, and I hear a plea for sympathy. I hear it as, I'm expected to win every game as a coach of Ohio State. But don't you think that's bleeping ridiculous? Like, don't you think that's a lot of pressure to put on me? I'm expected to win every game. It feels to me like you are begging in that moment. But if you're expected to win every game, that means they're penciling in W's against everybody that you have beaten. The ones that you haven't beaten happen to be the ones that matter 3-4 times more to everybody that cares about Ohio State football. And as such, I think a lot of them look at your resume, and the best that they can muster, Aaron, is a shoulder shrug.
It is incredible. Yeah, I don't want to keep beating home the point is nobody actually thinks he's going to be fired, but performances in big game, and I'll wrap on this because we got to get out of here, get to Pete Futek, but this is almost a worst case scenario because you could have lost this game and lost 30-27 and said, okay, the offense is okay, we're going to be okay, it's whatever. But to lose 14-3, and my last thought, I promise, it feels like prior to this, there's always been some sort of excuse. Even this year, well, you lost the last two, but it was Connor Stallion, stealing signs. Well, no stealing signs the last game. Then it was Kyle McCord, the starting quarterback, took a lot of the blame. There is no one to blame today other than Ryan Day.